Make sure you guys hit the subscribe button if you guys are enjoying the content that we're throwing up. And make sure you guys hit the like button if you enjoy the video. And yeah, let's begin. What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and a couple of things before we start this video. For those of you guys who are on the Discord server, and you'll find a link to the Discord down in the description, we have some cool stuff coming for you guys, right? So we've got like a Riddler bot, where like the Riddler will like escape from Arkham Asylum and will show up at different places throughout the server. And if you guess his riddle correctly, then one of the winners will be picked for something like a t-shirt, maybe a RobCore ring or something like that. We're still getting the rewards fleshed out, but that'll be coming relatively soon. And then we're also kicking around the idea of a Dungeons and Dragons or superhero themed Dungeons and Dragons, right? D&D kind of tournament thing, which seems like it'd be really cool. A lot of you guys have been asking for it for a while. So make sure you guys check out the Discord server down in the description. I think it'd be pretty awesome. But what I want to talk about in this video is I want to talk about Thor Force, specifically like Gorr the God Butcher and like Jane Foster Thor and then Odinson Thor. And one of the funny things, there's actually a theory floating around out there. Now, I'm not the one who came up with this theory, right? This is not my theory. I want to get that kind of cleared right off the bat, so people aren't just like, I heard that from Rob, he's the one that made it up. That's not true. I actually saw this theory kind of circulating around on the internet, and a fan actually gave it to me on Twitter. But it's a cool little tidbit here, right? So one of the questions people have asked is that if in Thor 4, we're gonna have Chris Hemsworth Thor, and then we're also gonna have like Natalie Portman's Jane Foster Thor, are they both gonna be running around at the same time? Are we gonna have like two Thors in that movie? And I think the answer to that question is no, we're not gonna have two Thors. I think we're gonna have three. This is gonna be the crazy thing about it, right? So like three Thors in Thor 4. I think it's gonna be kind of bonkers. So here's the deal. The story is based on Gorr the God Butcher, or at least he's gonna be the villain. Now, as always with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, never expect a direct adaptation of a comic, right? Which is to say, basically the comic book being filmed shot for shot and then given to us in as the movie-going audience. That never happens, right? It's usually just the general idea of the story and then reworked for movie form, which usually makes sense because for the most part, you can't really get away with the kind of things in movies that you can get away with comics because you're working with real life actors, you have a screenplay, you gotta make sure it stays under a certain amount of time. There's a lot of variables that go into making a film. But in the original God Butcher story, what you basically had there, at least towards the end, was 3 generations of Thor all facing off against Gorr. Now, in the comic, it was Thor from 3 different timelines, right? So Thor when he was younger, Thor in the modern era, and Thor in the future. In the movie, I think it's gonna be a little bit different, right? I think we're gonna get Jane Foster Thor in the future because somewhere along the line between now and then, Odin's son either loses the ability to lift his hammer or he passes it on to Jane Foster because like Odin, like somebody's got to run Asgard. And so, you know, Thor's basically like, I'm going to be the one to run the show here. Jane Foster, you keep an eye on Earth. And then he basically passes the mantle off to her. It could be that he loses the ability to wield his hammer, right? He's no longer worthy of it, which is what happened in the comics, right? He lost his worthiness and was just kind of there, right? Like he loses Stormbreaker, whatever the case is. Maybe Mjolnir comes back and he's not worthy of wielding it, but whatever happens to be the case, Jane Foster will be the one to take up the mantle. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see Natalie Portman as Thor, but she's older, right? She's maybe like 20 years older, 30 years older, something like that. And then that kind of leaves the question, what's the younger version of Thor that we're gonna see? And this is when things get interesting. I think we're gonna see Beta Ray Bill. And a lot of people ask that, right? A lot of people are like, you know, who would the younger Thor be in this situation? And I think it would be Beta Ray Bill. I think we might end up getting him. Now, the question is how and why? And that's the answer I don't really have, right? I don't have the answer to the question, how would we get Beta Ray Bill or why would we get Beta Ray Bill? Because the only thing we've seen about his character is he was one of the champions on Sakaar, right? In Thor 3, he was one of the former champions who was defeated at some point along the line, and we never really found out when, right? I think it'd be cool to find out that he was defeated by the Incredible Hulk, right? When Hulk first showed up on Sakaar, he defeated Beta Ray Bill and became the new champion. That would be awesome, right? But there's nothing to really indicate that like Beta Ray Bill does in any form or fashion have any dealings with any of the superheroes or any of the Earth-based characters or anything. In comics, it would make a lot more sense because when Beta Ray Bill first showed up, when Walt Simonson was writing Thor, that Beta Ray Bill was kind of an accidental discovery, right? That Beta Ray Bill was kind of like this cyborg-based protector of his people who were leaving their planet because it was destroyed by Surtur. And this led to Thor basically intervening at the request of Nick Fury to find out what this great big huge caravan of spacefaring vehicles was doing. And it led to a fight between Thor and Beta Ray Bill, and then ultimately a kind of tournament of sorts, right? But that was kind of instituted by Odin to determine who could wield Mjolnir. And when Beta Ray Bill initially defeated Thor and picked up his hammer, that's what led to the whole tournament. And ultimately Odin, Beta Ray Bill I think lost, and Odin ended up giving him his own hammer called Stormbreaker, right? That's the original Stormbreaker hammer in Marvel Comics. Things, as you guys can tell, have changed a lot in the MCU in comparison to the comics. So because of that, there's really no telling how this could work. I think it'd be cool if we got Beta Ray Bill, but I think that most likely what you'll see is just a younger version of Odin's son, right? I think that makes the most sense, right? A younger version of Thor, who in his younger days was brash, headstrong, wouldn't really listen to reason. And I think it'd be a great compliment to, in all honesty, to kind of have this younger version of Thor who's trying to be tamed by his modern age self, and to kind of see how much his character's changed, since the time before he was banished from Asgard onto Earth, and like how much he's learned since he's been on Earth, fighting alongside humans, during the events of Infinity War, Avengers Endgame, that kind of a thing. So there's a lot of really cool storytelling that could be done there. But for the long and short of this, in terms of how Jane Foster fits in, I think that's what we're going to get. The real question to ask here is, are we going to get that future version of Loki that killed the world, right? Because those of you guys who don't know, in that story, right, in Gore the God Butcher, there's a point where it kind of ties into that story, but not directly. It was actually during the events of Journey into Mystery, I think the comics that were being published at the time. But there's one point where future Loki actually kills everything on Earth, like all the superheroes, all the supervillains, all of humanity. He literally wipes out the world, right? It's just this dead, empty husk. And Thor is just kind of sitting in Asgard with all the Asgardians being dead, and he's just kind of the king of nothing, right? And then eventually Galactus shows up on Earth trying to consume it, and it leads to a great big fight between like old King Thor and Galactus, which is super cool. I doubt we'll see Galactus in that, but suffice it to say, in this whole thing, I haven't said that phrase in a while. Suffice it to say, in the midst of all this, Thor 4, I think, is going to be a really, really fun and entertaining film. Gore the God Butcher is an amazing villain. He's captivating, he's riveting, he's wildly fascinating. I would say he's probably the most interesting Thor villain that was ever created in Marvel Comics. So hats off to Jason Aaron for the invention of that character. But at this point, it's really too early to tell, right? It's really too early to know exactly what the plot's going to be. But as we get closer to the release of the film, we'll see like bits of news dropping and some spoiler leaks and different things like that, and we'll get a better indication of what the movie's going to look like. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Jane Foster character in the Thor 4 film is just a future version of Thor who wields the hammer after, for whatever reason, Odin's son ends up losing the ability to do so, whether he chooses to give it up or he has to because he loses the ability to be worthy, because we have to believe that Mjolnir is going to come back at some point, right? It'll be remade, it'll be reformed, something along those lines. It's not going to be gone forever, right? It's Thor's signature weapon. It's the one thing he's best known for, is like the square looking hammer that he just beats people up with, right? So either way, I think it's going to be awesome. I'm very, very excited for it, but I want to know your all's thoughts, right? I want to hear your all's thoughts, so post them down in the comment section. What do you think of this theory, right? Do you think it's a good one? Do you think it's a bad one? Can you think of one better? I'm really excited to see what kind of responses you guys have. So with that being said, guys, we're going to bring this video to an end. If you are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rod Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like, and I will catch you all later. Oh, you said peace. I will catch you all later. Peace.